All right, this is take two. We are live. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys motivation, inspiration, and a ton of tips to help you guys on your fitness journey. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, but my Wi Fi kind of clicked out and everything just kind of blah. So here I am starting over again. Guys, I'm a nutrition coach, I'm not a tech girl. So anyways, today's episode, we are going to be talking about the impact that food quality has on your overall goals when it comes to fat loss, improving your hormones, improving your performance, improving your body composition. Because I think that there are a lot of people out there that are a little bit confused, and there's a school of thought that's all about macros only, and then a school of thought that's all about food quality. And I'm kind of the person that puts it together. I like to call it flexible dieting. Well, I don't call it that, but that's what other people have named it. But that's what I fully believe in. And following an 80-20 based approach. But I want to give you guys some things to consider on your journey if you guys are dialing in your nutrition to think about when it comes to food quality and how it does affect things. So, first things first, if you get any value out of this episode or any of my episodes, please send me over a message, a DM. And if you particularly find value in this episode, as I was mentioning, I got cut off when I was recording my podcast earlier. I have put together a couple of resources for you guys to kind of take a look at options for food quality based on protein, carbs, and fats. I've got three different guides for those of you guys wanting to dial things in. You guys can just send me a message and I'll send you guys that over. It will be posted in my Facebook group later this week. I actually already posted the protein one and I've created the other ones as well. So let's get started. So, first and foremost, when it comes to food quality, I do full-heartedly believe that dialing in food quality first is important. I think that food quality and meal balance should always come before we start to focus on quote unquote numbers and all that stuff. Yes, we want to keep a food diary, but however you're doing that, whether it's using an app or you're using a food journal or you're sticking to a certain number of meals a day, but food quality should always be dialed in first, not from the aspect so much of what we're removing, but what we're adding in. We want to make sure we're getting in enough nutrients because what you eat does play a factor in things. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the effect that the types of foods you have on your metabolism. When it comes to metabolism, I think that people talk about, oh, I want a faster metabolism, or why is my metabolism so slow? And what you guys have to understand is that your metabolic rate, your basal metabolic rate, is dictated by your age, your height, your weight, and your body composition. So, how much lean muscle mass you have. Now, if you have some underlying thyroid condition, or there are some slight maybe changes if you have some kind of issue with metabolic syndrome, things like diabetes or those types of conditions, you might see a very, very small percentage of a change in your basal metabolic rate based on those things. But we can optimize with nutrition. What most people are mostly referring to is their TDEE, their total daily energy expenditure. Why does it seem like I'm not burning that many calories? And this is where food quality can really play a factor. So, when it comes to first and foremost, that metabolic rate, or what I would like to recall, I'm sorry, I want to rewind a little bit, by your TDE, what we eat plays a huge factor in the thermic effect of feeding, the types of foods that you eat. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about higher thermic foods and lower thermic foods. So, higher thermic foods are foods that are going to burn more calories just to digest them. And these are going to be your high quality, whole food based sources, things with a lot of fiber, a lot of protein, and they're going to require a lot more effort. So, a lot of roughage, vegetables, proteins that require you to chew. If you're doing a lot of drinking of your calories or very processed calories from like even whey protein shakes, those things are not going to be as thermic as actually eating chicken breast. So if you want to increase your metabolic rate, your metabolic rate, your total daily energy expenditure without putting much effort in, simply changing the types of foods that you're consuming to be more whole food based, you are actually going to be burning more calories just to digest those foods. When it comes to hormones, the types of foods you eat does really matter, not just from a macronutrient perspective, but from a micronutrient perspective as well. A lot of our fruits, vegetables, a lot of our carbohydrate sources also provide a lot of phytoestrogens and a lot of antioxidants and a lot of other things that are going to help you with balancing out hormones, blood sugar, and all of those things that might also help you improve your hormone profile as well. When it comes to recovery, okay, so again, just like hormones, the types of foods that you're consuming, getting in enough micronutrients is going to help remove oxidative stress. A lot of antioxidants are in a lot of our berries and our vegetables. And then obviously the biggest one here is how it's going to affect your appetite. Okay, if we're eating a lot of processed foods, we are going to crave a lot of processed foods. And a lot of those ultra processed foods are very dense in calories and hard to control the amounts of. So it's not saying that we can't eat those things, but if we're eating a lot of those things, it can be very easy for us to go over on our total calorie budget, which when it comes to seeing changes in your body composition, we want to be controlling your calorie intake. So food quality does play a factor. And the last one that I want to talk a little bit about is sustainability. So when it comes to making nutritional changes, if you are following a macro-based approach, unless you plan to live in your food calculator, in your food tracking app for the rest of your life, you want to make sure that you are dialing in food quality as well, because oftentimes if you're not, it's going to be really easy for you to regain the weight, because a lot of packaged processed foods, again, are going to be higher in calories, and it's a lot harder for you guys to actually control those calories without actually looking at the macros on them. So what I do want you guys to understand is that there's no quote unquote bad foods or good foods. Like, that's one thing that I think we have to get out of our head. So if you decided to have a slice of pizza on a Saturday night, you shouldn't feel bad about it, but it shouldn't be, oh, I cheated on my diet, so I'm going to have XYZ tomorrow, and then I'm going to get back on track with my clean eating plan on Monday. Like, the body doesn't work that way. It's just that our overall, we want to make sure that, I like to call it the 80-20 approach, or 85-15, or even 90-10, depending on what kind of a lifestyle you want to live. But we're really looking to maximize how much nutrients we're taking in and allowing ourselves to still have some flexibility for those times. That's how you're going to get the most of it. I love the analogy, and I didn't create this analogy, but it's kind of like you get a flat tire, and rather than plugging the tire, you decide that you're going to go ahead and slash the other 3 tires. Like, you wouldn't do that, right? But that's what people do when they eat something that's like lower quality. And I think the more important thing is learning how to just have that thing and move on. That's really what's going to get you the best results. So here's what I want you guys to know about, like, the best sources of foods. And I'm going to break it down into macros, because when it comes to your overall nutrition, macronutrients are what's going to matter most for everything. We want to make sure we're getting in enough protein, enough carbohydrates, enough fat when we're actually controlling our calories. But the sources of each of those things matters for, obviously, you getting in enough nutrients. So for our protein sources, we want to be looking for minimally processed for the majority of them. Lean animal proteins are going to be the best sources, but also things like grass-fed beef, salmon, like salmon, cold water fish, low fat dairy, not full fat dairy. I'll talk about that later on. But dairy products, those types of things are going to be your best sources of protein, because they have all the amino acids. And again, thinking about actually chewing your food. So I see this also often. A lot of people like to supplement with protein shakes. And if you're drinking 2 or 3 protein shakes a day, you're likely not feeling very satiated, and you're literally just drinking your protein away. So you're not actually getting that thermic effect of feeding. So you want to think about things that your body has to actually digest. When it comes to carbohydrates, this is a big one. And I'm going to focus a lot on carbs and fats, because this is where I think the biggest misconceptions are in terms of what foods are good and bad, quote unquote, good and bad. When it comes to carbohydrates, your best sources of carbs are going to start off with plants and fruits. So, like, obviously getting in lots of vegetables and fruits, also starchy vegetables like potatoes, parsnips, carrots, root vegetables, plantains. That's really a fruit, but those starchy vegetables. And then we're going to be looking at complex carbohydrates like whole grain pasta, rice, whole grain breads. What we're really looking for here is a higher amount of volume and a higher amount of fiber. Those 2 things are going to really help a ton, especially the fiber when it comes to things like hormones and metabolism. So that's going to help improve your blood sugar. It's going to help even with things like cholesterol, and also help keeping you more satiated. And then when it comes to fats, this is a really, really big one for people to think about, because it's really easy to get fat in our diet. It's fats everywhere. It's in all kinds of processed foods. It's in our animal proteins. We use it for cooking, we use it for dressings, and fat makes everything taste good. But the sources of fats do matter. And there's not really quote unquote good or bad fats, but we do want to be looking for, I like to call them like minimally processed fats or more natural fats. All fats are going to be processed, but things like olive oil, avocado, nuts and seeds, coconut, um, animal products. So, like eggs, egg yolks, especially if they're from free range chickens, grass fed beef. These are all great sources of fats and are going to also be high in nutrients, micronutrients as well. What we want to watch out for is getting a lot of our fats from the trans fats, the lard, the vegetable oil, the soybeans, because that's going to have a lot of fat with very little actual nutrients. And it's the same thing with carbohydrates. If you're getting your carbs from things like gummy bears and sugary drinks, then you're not really getting any nutrients. You're just getting sugar. Not that sugar is bad, but you're lacking those nutrients that your body needs. We want to make sure that we're thinking about adding in these things, not removing them, not so much about removing the other things. Obviously, we want to have that balance. And then the next thing to talk about is kind of like, I know I put vegetables in the category of carbohydrates, but I think that one of the things that often gets missed, especially when people are tracking macros, is I look at their diets and it's like, oatmeal protein powder or like bagel, cream cheese, yogurt. And then lunch will be like chicken, rice. And then dinner will be like bun, burger. And then snack might be pretzels and cheese. I'm just randomly, but I see literally no vegetables. Okay. So one of my rules of thumb with my clients is we want to be looking to get around 150 to 200 grams of vegetables at least at 2 meals per day, because that's going to help you cover in some of the micronutrients. It's going to help you feel more satiated. It's going to get you some fiber, and it's obviously going to help you, kind of maintain a healthy diet. So these are a couple of things that I want you guys to think about when it comes to food quality, because I think that, like I said, a lot of people focus so much on one end of the spectrum or the other, and both things matter. And that's why I like to break it down into macronutrients. So protein, carbs, fats, because that's what matters most. But the sources of those macronutrients does matter. And if you want a copy of my guides that I have created with different sources of protein, carbs, and fats, just shoot me over a message and I'll send it on over to you. But hopefully this episode was helpful.